Hi, and welcome back. And so we're going to talk a little bit about week three. And with week three, we're going to kind of go over some of the things that are going to happen here. Week three has got the core elements of non-monetary rewards and work experience. Okay, so what we're going to talk about here, normally when people think about compensation, the first thing you think of is cash. And something that we've kind of been beating in everyone's head here for the past week is, hey, wait a minute, there's some other things that need to be taken into consideration here, right? So one of the things that we're going to say is after completing the week, you should name the most typically offered non-monetary rewards, describe the core elements of work experience relevant to total work rewards approach, explain governmental compliance issues affecting benefits and benefits administration, demonstrate knowledge of the demographics, psychographic differences of employee preferences for non-monetary rewards and work experience, and describe the role of non-monetary rewards in work experience and broader total rewards approach to compensation management and how the element strategic decisions are made. Okay, now that we've caught this, so that's a mouthful. So what are we really getting at? Okay, here's the thing. In addition to compensation, we offer benefits. Okay, benefits don't always affect other people in the same way. Okay, we've talked about some generational issues that we've seen. There's also some other issues, gender, minority status, experiences, family size. There's for example, if I'm a single male, not married, I probably don't care, about family level health care being paid for by the company. I'd rather have $20,000 extra in my pocket. Conversely, if I'm married with, 6 kids and you're going to offer to pay for my entire family's health care, I'm on board. You got me. Okay. Those are sorts of things that we have to take in consideration. Now, obviously, we can't start, choosing whether we're going to hire somebody or not hire somebody based on the family size because we want to offer or not offer or rewards for that. But you're going to have an understanding within your organization and within the industry itself what kind of people tend to exist within it. Very good example, daycare workers. Daycare, typically speaking, have people who really care about kids. At least you hope so, right? And if they care about kids, there's certain, benefits that you could offer that, typically, have that, and I've had, daycare workers that have worked for me. Some couldn't have kids, so that's the reason why they wanted to go work in the daycare industry, because they love kids, but they can't have kids. And so they that's how they sort of fulfill that need. That person is going to have a different benefit need than somebody who says, well, I just got done raising, 4 kids, and I kind of missed the kids aspect of it, so I decided to go back and, as a second career working in daycare so that I can, get that experience working with children again. That person's going to have different motivations than the other person. So there's a whole host of things that need to be taken into consideration with that. There's government compliance issues. There's also tax issues, of course, being the CPA, of course, I would know that. But, and some of that you're going to have to work with because, a very good example, $5,250 worth of tuition through 2017 can be offered to employees tax-free as a as a benefit, and the government, the organization takes an expense, the employee doesn't recognize income. It's a good deal for up to 2017. So when we start taking a look at that kind of a benefit, who's that going to appeal to? So if you work in an industry that says, look, we'll hire you as a bachelor, but we're going to require you to be a master's level if you want to get promoted to manager or above, you're probably going to want, hey, you're going to have to provide me some education benefits. So that's going to be kind of key to them, right? But the government puts a lot of restrictions and also a lot of guidance on what you can do and what you can't do. And it dovetails into a lot of the other stuff we've talked about in other classes, diversity issues. There's certain benefits you cannot offer because it could cause a disparate impact, as is the fancy term, which basically says, yeah, we realize you're not trying to create a diversity issue, but you've inadvertently done so. Okay, so that's really what a disparate impact is. The role that non-monetary rewards and work experience. Work experience is a phenomenal benefit if your organization can tailor that. So if very good example, my organization, my company, we specialize in international accounting. If If you're a person who wants to get involved in international accounting to do international taxes, my company's probably going to be a good place for you. If you're a person who doesn't want that experience, you're probably not going to want to work for me as much as somebody else who might come back and say, oh, wow, I want to do international taxes. Well, why do you want to, and I hope it's not because they want to travel the world, because unfortunately we don't get to do that as much. But it's an interesting area of tax, and it's definitely one that's becoming more and more in demand. So let's take a look at this here. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next slide. And so we've, when you start looking at the sort of the commentary for this week, same chart we've had in the past, the monetary rewards versus the non-monetary rewards and the work experience. Obviously, the one that are highlighted are the non-monetary rewards and the work experience. These are just sort of examples. They're not necessarily an entirely complete list of different non-monetary benefits and work experience elements to a total rewards package. And so when you're taking a look at a lot of these, very good example, income protection benefits. What are those? Very good example, disability. So if I offer you short-term or long-term disability as a part of your total rewards package, that might be invaluable to you because, I was working at KPMG, one of the managers. He was getting ready to move. They were actually transferring him up to New York. And he was carrying his daughter, who, by the way, happened to be 4 months at the time, very beautiful girl. He was carrying his daughter down the stairs and tripped and fell. And twisted himself in a way to protect his daughter, as he should have, being a caring father that he was. But the bad news is he actually broke his foot in about 3 different places. And was in a cast and was out of work for 2 weeks. In fact, they had to hold up his move because, he was injured. Protect his girl, obviously. That's to me, that was the most important part. But he was hurt. And so what happens? They have short-term disability that he was able to take advantage of. Still got 100% of his pay, sat at home, was required to do nothing. And he was taken care of. Did the accident happen at work? No. But that doesn't matter with short-term disability. But it's a benefit that he received as part of his total rewards compensation. Long-term disability. Very common, incident when I was in the military. People get hurt. Now obviously in the military it's a little bit of a different process, but theoretically, if the military was a company and somebody gets hurt and they're going to be out of work for say 3 years, you're probably not going to give them 100% of what they're supposed to be earning. Long-term disability typically pays, depends on how much you pay for. But I've seen it go as high as 60 to 70%. But generally it's not 100. Just because it's, they want to encourage you not to be off work any longer than what is necessary. And something that they've noticed, I guess, in research, is that the longer that somebody's not working, the less likely they are to want to return to work, and so there needs to be that sort of incentive. So that's one reason why they do it. And then another reason why they do it, of course, is cost. It is incredibly expensive to pay somebody's salary for 3 years, especially if they're making 6 figures. Medical insurance, we've talked about this in the past. Medical insurance is a great benefit, especially to the company, because from an accounting standpoint, it's a tax-deductible expense on the company, so they pay lower taxes as a result of it. Give it to the employee. Employee never picks it up as income, so they don't have to pay taxes again on that income. And if you're ever taking a look at your W-2, go take a look at your W-2 and go to box 12 and look for code DD, double D. That is how much your health insurance costs. So if you think that the health insurance that you have is uber cheap and you have no idea how much it is, go look at code DD, and that's exactly how much your health insurance costs, those company-provided health coverage. You'd be surprised. So go take a look at that. Tidbit for today. Vision and dental. Okay, so obviously vision and dental, part of medical insurance. I'm not going to go into this. We talk about disability here. Trying to figure out the income protection benefits versus disability. I was kind of noticing that as I kind of spoke ahead. But I won't talk about disability again. Life insurance, typically speaking, what they'll do, each company's different. Typically, it's a term policy equal to two to three times your annual income. Something happens to you, your family can still live about 2 to 3 years at your comfortable level. Or, if you have a smaller family, they cut back and say, well, instead of 4 mouths to feed, we only have three. We can actually live a little longer than what you would have gotten had you, gotten that income. And of course, it's non-taxable, so it's, goes even further than that. But typically, it's, usually 1 to 2 years. Now, these are some of the sort of the more creative ones. Daycare, employee assistance program. Daycare, of course, on-site daycare would always be a great benefit, especially to parents of very young kids. Some organizations just aren't big enough to be able to offer it. Sometimes what will happen is office buildings will have on-site daycare, and then multiple businesses can take advantage of it. Then we have, assistance programs. I think I talked about in a previous video where we had health-related programs where a nurse used to come out and teach us how to cook, teach us how to eat, and things of that nature. Wasn't as important for me. I mean, I was, my wife is pretty healthy. I mean, I know double chin's probably not saying much for this, but I've been very lucky in that. I mean, when I go to the doctors, they take a look at my heart. My heart is outstanding. I've my blood pressure is usually fantastic. My pulse is at around 60, which is equal to that of somebody who works out a lot, because I do. It's just I think it's just I'm getting older and some other things. But the nurse would come out and help us if that's what we wanted, and it was free. We didn't, well, not free, but it was a benefit that was provided by the company. Tuition assistance, like I said, I know I can't. The new tax law that just got passed, I'm still learning a little bit about it, so I don't know if that's being taken away. It's definitely something to keep an eye on. Work experience. Say, for example, you work in a field of computers, and you're like, okay, well, I really enjoy database management. Very good example, database management. I'm very good at database management, but I want to learn more about data warehousing instead. So one of the things I could do is that instead of, when I'm choosing my next job, instead of just choosing another database management job, I could say, let's learn a little bit more about data warehousing as opposed to database management. Now, if you're sitting here watching this video going, what the world is difference between database management and data warehousing? That's not important. But what I'm trying to do is sort of illustrate that there may be some value, if you think about it, to allowing people to come in and learn a valuable experience. And so that needs to be part of that total rewards package too, particularly if you work for an organization that is sort of a leader in the industry. Community, individual and organizational, very good example. I went to work at KPMG for 2 years. I'm part of the Alumni Association. I can go to the Alumni Association and talk to other alums. Many of us just have a similar background. Something else we notice in the accounting industry, many people who work at KPMG decide they're not going to work at KPMG anymore. They usually farm out to one of several different companies that tend to be where a lot of KPMG guys go. PwC, same thing. Deloitte, same thing. Okay. Recognition. Obviously, we want to give people a positive work experience, give them the recognition that they feel that they need. We all value being appreciated, and that recognition, and it doesn't have to be. I remember when I was an officer in the military, they used to say it's not that much. All you have to do is just simply recognize people in front of others. It's the old adage, praise in public, criticize in private, and fantastic opportunities if and how much does it cost to announce how great somebody did something at the morning meeting? It costs you nothing. But look, I've been the recipient of praise at a morning meeting. I've been the giver of praise at a morning meeting. I have seen its effect. It is fantastic, and it doesn't cost anything, but it's phenomenally useful. Training and development kind of gets back into what we were kind of talking about, valuable experience within something, particularly if your company's a leader. But at the same time, you can also give somebody and say, hey, look, you come work for me. Look, I know you're a database guy, and in your interviews, you told me that you really were kind of looking at this data warehousing thing. I think that's kind of cool. I can get you that kind of experience. Um, you do a good job here, and 6 months later, we'll consider moving you up to getting you some, there used to be something that they talked about in a lot of the bigger organizations called internal internships, where they're kind of like, hey, look, you're doing fantastic with this. In order to get some good job growth potential, we're going to send you over to this group over here for 4 weeks to work on a project with them, so that you can understand how they work, so that it gives you that better career development. And so that's very valuable. Promotions, look, being promoted is awesome. I've had it happen to me several times. Nothing makes me happier and whistling Dixie on the way home than finding out I'm getting a promotion. Obviously, normally it's because there's a big pay raise with it, but other things are just fantastic also, and then a sense of accomplishment. Um, I'm not a big purveyor of the idea of participation trophies, but at the same time, when somebody really earns something, and they, and sometimes when you can hand out a certificate saying, hey, you're, we used to do this in the military, sailor of the quarter, sailor of the year. There's that sense of accomplishment that's greater than what the cost of the actual award was, and so on and so forth on that. So benefits preference, okay, employee benefits preferences. They kind of talk a little bit about this was a survey that they had taken all the way back in 2002. It's 2002. I don't know how much I'd go for it. I might be able to find one that's a little bit more recent, but 2002, they're talking about medical insurance, paid vacation, paid employee pensions, retirement savings plan, prescription drugs, ability to choose benefits to meet needs. That was kind of the big idea with the cafeteria plans. It's like the big cafeteria. You go in, you kind of pick what you want versus what you don't want. Long-term disability. A lot of people don't see value into it until you need it. That's kind of the way it works. Then they talk about on table 3.3 federally mandated benefits. Now, these are things that you are required to provide by the government. Workers' compensation. You will have to pay for workers' compensation insurance, and workers' compensation. If something happens into the thing, workers' compensation insurance is how you get that taken care of. Each state handles it differently, so you got to figure out how your state handles it. Social Security. Social Security is a benefit that we all have to pay into. It's actually 12.4% of your income. One half of it's paid by the company, one half is paid by you, the employee. In fact, if you take a look at your W-2, you'll see 6 boxes. Box 1 is your wages for federal wages. Then you have your withholdings. Box 2 is your Social Security wages, which is usually your federal wages plus any any non-taxable income that is taxed for Social Security wages. And then if you take that number, multiply it by 6.2, that's probably the number that's in that box, unless you're one of those people who makes more than $118,500, in which case you're maxed out at You're maxed out at whatever that number is. I think it's, well, actually, I haven't done any tax returns to that yet, so I don't have that number memorized like I used to. Last year's it was 7364, I believe is what it was. But that's neither here nor there. Time off for family medical leave, the FMLA. This was passed back in the 90s. Bill Clinton was the one that actually got this. Well, I shouldn't say Bill Clinton. It was done during Bill Clinton's tenure. Obviously, it was the Congress at the time that passed the bill, because that's how it works in our country. But Bill Clinton really pushed this one through. I mean, he was really backing behind it. It provides for leave in case of a medical emergency. The medical emergency, generally speaking, it's not just the worker themselves; it's also family members. So it's important. Continuation of medical insurance coverage, also known as COBRA. I would make a bad GI Joe reference right now, but I'm not going. I'm going to pass on that. So continuation of health insurance coverage, the COBRA. I'll tell you, I've been a benefactor of this when family members got laid off, and then of course when I was laid off, I was offered it. I was laid off probably about 4 years ago from the company I was in. It was right before a buyout. Got laid off. Best part about being in the accounting industry, this happens all the time, and I was back at work within a month. Actually, 2 months, I think. I took the summer off, played a lot of golf, and then I went back to work afterwards. So it was actually a pretty good deal. Severance pay was nice. Continuation of medical insurance coverage. It allows you to keep your health care. The bad part about this is you have to pay for it as the employee. Unless the company decides to offer a kick-in to cover the cost. And some companies will do it. When my wife went through her layoff, she was, given that. When I went through my layoff, they didn't give me. So there's some that get it and some that don't. And then, of course, federally mandated benefits. There's, they say health insurance. That's kind of on the fence with everything that's been going on in Congress right now. So I would probably put that on hold. There's certain companies that have to offer it, and then there's other companies that kind of get around it. And then, what kind of health insurance to offer? It's whatever the Affordable Care Act is going to end up requiring after they get done with whatever they're going to do. Typical optional benefits, pay time off. PTO is kind of, and I mentioned this in one of the posts for week 2. It used to be this thing where they had vacation pay, sick pay, personal days, bereavement pay, and all that sort of stuff. And a lot of companies were saying, a lot of this is getting confusing, so we're going to streamline this a lot. And they took a lot of this stuff and they put it into one big lump sum that they just said is PTO, pay time off. And the problem is that under some states' laws, vacation time, if you accrue vacation time and you leave your job, you have to be paid for it because it's a benefit that you earned. Sick pay did not have to be paid for. So I remember I left one job, I had 6 days of sick pay left. They didn't pay me a dime for it. When I found out that they weren't going to pay me for a dime for it, I of course spent 3 days going to the doctors before I left the company, getting a lot of medical stuff taken care of so I didn't have to do it on the next job. A lot of that's gone away. PTO is pay time off is usually lumped one in. They'll compensate you for it if you leave most of the time. I think they're required to in many states, so that's kind of the way it works out. Bereavement, most companies still don't, because obviously bereavement, which is leave that you get when somebody passes away in your family, to go handle final things. Obviously nobody plans for that stuff. So we just want to make sure that that's still offered to our people. And then jury duty. If you've ever been called for jury duty, and, I remember, I don't know how it is nowadays because I haven't done it, but I remember the last time I almost got called for it. Luckily I was in the military, so I was able to not get, I didn't have to go into it. They were going to give me like $5 a day, which is kind of like $5 a day to sit there and listen to some guy who killed someone. That's not really and then here's the other thing is that if you get called, obviously I believe in doing my civic duty. However, if you're going to tell me that I have to stop my work and my work stops paying me so that I can go earn $5 a day to listen to this person because he did something illegal, it's painful to do. So a lot of companies say, hey, you know what, it's our civic duty to also help out too, so we're going to support them. And I think that's fantastic. I think that's the way, one of the greatest things I love about this country is how we all step up, and we tend to, and so that's fantastic. Child care facilities, we talked a little bit about that. Domestic partner benefits. I'm actually wondering how much longer those are going to stick around. As we get more and more states that are actually not more and more states. It's already been done with DOMA being repealed. The term domestic partner, I know it's still out there, but I think there's more and more of the states are just saying, hey, it's all marriage. So we're not going to call it domestic partner benefits anymore. But there could be some legal ramifications there because some states are going to, some states don't have domestic partner, but maybe people want it to be still a domestic partner. How are you going to offer the benefits? Some states that did not offer, I remember I have a cousin who's gay, and he lives in the state of Arizona. And I said, so are you and your boyfriend thinking about getting married at some point? He's like, well, I live in Arizona. And this was many, many, many years ago. And he's like, in Arizona, we can't do that. And I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, well, we had thought about now. So one of the best benefits that his company offered, though, is they said, look, we realize that Arizona doesn't offer this. We don't agree with it, or don't wish that they did not offer it. And as a result of which, if you come to us with a domestic partner agreement from another state, we'll go ahead and grant you all the benefits that the person has. Okay, so some companies would step up and do that. Legal insurance. I've actually participated in this before. There's a policy that you can purchase that it allows your employees to say, oh, I got a speeding ticket, but I need to fight it because the cop was he didn't do something that he was supposed to do. So the legal insurance will provide a lawyer for you to be able to fight for that stuff. Another example, I needed a will done. So my legal insurance coverage provided me with a lawyer that would do a draft will and a trust to kind of get some things set up. So it's a great thing to be able to set up. Tuition assistance, again, like I said, tax law changes. Some of this may go away if it went the way that I think it did, but again, not to offer tax advice, but just to kind of follow what some of that stuff is. Flexible spending accounts, FSAs. That's where and there's the spending accounts. There's a lot of flavors for that, and I don't want to get into a lot of the tax ramifications for it. But the greatest things about them is, you can health spending accounts. Well, not health. Those health savings accounts, and then there's flexible spending accounts. Where you can put away a certain amount of money, and then you can say, okay, I need to go down. And very good example. My wife had one with her plan, so we socked away the money. The bad news is you have to spend it all in the year, whether you use, and if you don't, you lose it, which is not something we want. So very good example. My wife needed to go get new glasses. She went down and got new glasses, and what it does is where the flexible spending account really offers the most benefit. If you were to go down and buy a pair of glasses, would you get a tax write-off on it? That's a trick question, because the answer is yes, you do, but most likely you won't. Okay, the tax write-off is, and under the new law, it's actually changing a little bit, but under the old law, it was they would take 10% of your income. So say you make $100,000 a year. They would take 10% of that, which is $10,000. You would get a deduction for everything you spent over $10,000. Okay? So if you go down and buy, most people don't spend 10% of our income on medical expenses. Medical expenses are expensive, but we don't spend it. What happens is the company provides us with insurance, and again, like I said, take a look at your W-2 box 12, look for code DD, and you'll find out how much your health insurance is. The bad news is you don't get a benefit for writing that off because your company already did. Okay? But that's probably a $12,000 deal, $12,000, 17. I've seen it go up to $17,000 on one of mine once. That's a pretty big deal that you're not, you don't get to write off. And as a result of that health insurance, though, you don't have a whole lot of medical expenses, I would assume. Typically the people who are writing that stuff off is senior citizens because they don't have very huge amounts of income, but senior citizens have lots of medical issues. So what happens is you can't get the tax deduction. So Congress kind of created, the flexible spending account where you could say, hey, I'm going to give you a chance to put $5,000 pre-tax income. So we're not going to tax you on that $5,000. We're going to take it out. We're going to put it in this money, in this account. Then you can go and you can spend as much as you need up to this amount that you put away, and then it's pre-tax money. So it still saves you the tax money, whether as long as you spend it all. They said legal services and legal insurance. That's kind of what we talked about earlier. Employee assistance programs. I remember I was in the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society. I remember I was a student, had to go home. Grandmother passed away all of a sudden, and I needed an airline ticket for the very next day for to get home. Now the greatest thing is I didn't ask them for the money. I was able to take out a service loan and borrow the money to get home because it was I mean it would have been an exorbitant ticket. Had I bought it on my own, it was going to be about a $3,000 ticket because I was traveling from Florida all the way up to Washington State. That's literally across the country. And then the very day, and it happened to be a very busy time of the year. So, Navy Marine Corps Relief Society calls them up and says, hey, Ensign Matthews needs an airplane ticket to go to Spokane, Washington for bereavement. Can you hook us up? $600 ticket later, boom, it was done. So, actually, no, $700. But anyways, so $700 I had to cough up, got it done. Everything was taken care of, and it was good. A lot of companies will offer similar programs, and companies can buy these programs, and then if you need certain things to be taken care of, they can get taken care of. I've seen some of this. The employee assistance program also include concierge service. I've seen where in some consulting organizations where they're like, hey, we'll do free direct cleaning for you for your professional clothes. How cool is that? You bring all your professional clothes to work. We'll get somebody to come by, pick up your professional clothes. They'll take them away and they'll dry clean them and give them back to you at work. And it's phenomenal. Long-term care insurance, that's where you can purchase insurance so that theoretically, when you get older and eventually you need long-term care, where you would go to I hate to call these old folks homes because I know that's probably not the politically correct term anymore, but that's what we would call them in the day when I was younger. Senior care facilities, I guess, is another term for them. Long-term care insurance can actually provide coverage for a lot of those. Free or subsidized parking. If you work in downtown DC, you will probably know about this very well because most companies offer this. You have to park downtown DC. It's very expensive. So you go down and the company says, hey, we'll cover your parking, and there's a maximum limit. I'll be honest, I haven't dealt with this in a long time, so I don't know the limits right off the top of my head. But I remember it was like $265, $275 or something like that. That they can't do more than that. Free or subsidized. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. They can't do more than that. Get a benefit that they don't write into your paycheck. Okay, anything above that they can pay anytime they want. They just got to add it into your compensation. Free or subsidized public transportation. One of the things about that is, of course, especially Washington D.C., we have a metro, we have a bus system. We want to encourage people to use that. So some organizations, especially if they believe in this, they will, nonprofits do this a lot. They'll say, hey, look, we're going to cover your metro rides all the way up and down. It's phenomenal. I remember when I was working in Japan, I worked for the government, and the government paid for all of my train usage. They gave me a monthly stipend, and what I did is I got a train pass that would go from my house to wherever I needed to go to, and I could use that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it was great. Especially if I went to a school that was far away, I usually got lots of free train rides. It was actually pretty awesome because it didn't benefit just when I went to work. It benefited me when I was on my life too. Cafeteria plans for benefits, we talked about that in the past. Not widespread, but increasingly offered. Just a few of these. Probably the ones that I've talked about in my own company: gym and exercise facilities. Subsidized cafeterias or free food beverages. I would love to get a really good soda machine in our office. Needless to say, there's some forces that are preventing that kind of sort of thing. Paid time off for volunteering is something that I've actually experienced, and then of course, provided. Game rooms. That is something that I've looked into. Not so much. I've seen in the past where they have these lactation rooms where they really set these up for women who are they continually need to dispense. They provide private rooms. Something else I've noticed a lot, though, is they do, it's not listed here, but quiet rooms to go do meditation or prayer. You know, they call these meditation rooms, but you know, so if you're of the Muslim faith and you're strict about maintaining your 5 days per, 5 times per day prayer, you can go do your times per day prayer in these meditation rooms. But at the same time, if you're also a Buddhist and you want to go do some meditation, you can use the meditation room for that too. And a lot of these are very, like you said, not widespread, but increasing. And then there's a company spotlight about Wawa, about Wawa pay benefits. Go to the website and you can actually learn a little bit more. We're hitting about 35 minutes, so I don't want to drag this up too much more. JetBlue, I don't mean to laugh, but JetBlue was kind of the darling of, many years ago on the Wall Street exchange. Everybody, I still remember going to some of these cocktail parties and people went, "Oh yeah, I just bought 500 shares of JetBlue or whatever," and I'm like it was some sort of status symbol. But they are well known for being a company that really focuses on taking care of its people, and so another one that we didn't put onto here, but I think is really good is Southwest Airlines. I don't fly Southwest very much now. I'm more of an American Airlines person. When I flew Southwest, everybody seems so happy. And I remember the Facebook video of the guy who's doing all of the, he's doing the pre-flight landing speech using all of these different, Looney Tunes characters. They're just having a ruckus. Actually, I have a friend of mine who actually works for Southwest. He says it's the most fun job he's had, and he seemed to have a lot of fun in the military too. But he's a pilot, so he enjoys himself a lot. So that's always pretty good. Yeah, so one of the things that they put here, the government compliance issues, I really want you to take a look at these because it's funny. I've had these laws, National Labor Relations Act of 35, FICA, FUTA, FSLA. FSLA is a major law. You probably want to make sure that you're paying attention to that. Civil Rights Act of 64 obviously is important. Was redone in 91. Hopefully they have it. They don't have it on here, but I remember in 91 there was some major changes to the Civil Rights Act. Nothing will get you into trouble faster than violating one of these laws, and so you want to make sure that you're kind of the up and up. Like I said, we CPAs and HR have one thing in common. We are cheaper versions of lawyers. Okay, so we need to know the laws that affect our industries and make sure that we're taking care of the organization. Because remember, sort of the top secret thing that we say, HR. One of the reasons why most of us get into this job is because we really love people, but our primary responsibility is to management and to the company, and to make sure that we are taking care of the company and making sure that the company stays out of the trouble that's necessary. And that is our primary motivation for our jobs. Now, obviously, if your company is doing something unethical or immoral or illegal, that changes. That's wrong. You need to seek legal help at that point if you think that your company is. HIPAA. Most people take a look at HIPAA and the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, and they say, what does that have to do with me? That sounds like a hospital thing. But it does affect us because health insurance choices and certain health insurance conditions or health conditions are protected under HIPAA. And you have a responsibility as an HR person to also protect under the law. So we want to make sure that all gets taken care of. ERISA, we talked about that. Requires employees eligible for pension plans at age 21 being offered to the employer. Does not require that employees offer a pension plan, but if a company does have one, ERISA controls the administration of it, including vestibility. Yeah, and I set up a 401k for my company. I set up one called a safe harbor, which is where the IRS kind of leaves us alone with some of it, but also it matches what ERISA wants. It made it a lot easier. I didn't have to think about stuff. But all my employees who come to work for me and have been there for at least a year, 21 years old, they're going to get a 3% match to begin with. Now, my hope is at some point we'll kick up on that, but that's what we did in the beginning, just to say that we had a 401k plan. Uniform Services Employment Reemployment Rights Act. I only bring this up because here at University of Maryland, University College, we tend to have a lot more veterans. This is a key law for you guys, all right? And I say guys and gals. Gives the individual right of employment in a company in which they worked prior to military service. So if you think about it, if you left a company to go join the military, and say and then you come back, they're supposed to offer you a position equal to or at when you left. Now, obviously, if you went in the military and spent 20 years away from the military, don't go back to the grocery store you used to work at before you joined the military and demand a grocery job back, or unless you want to. 20 years, I don't know if it goes back that far, but I guess theoretically it does. But I would say this really applies to reservists. Okay, reservists would probably be the biggest benefactor of this law, just because, hey, you're in the reserves. You get called up, you're sent to Iraq for 13 months, and you want to come back, they have to give you your job back, okay? They cannot fire you because you got called up to go do military service. Personally, as a veteran myself, I tend to think that this is a fantastic law, and I think I don't know why we even have to have it as a law, but that's just between you and me. Clean Air Act. It says it requires employees in smoggy metropolitan areas such as Los Angeles comply with state and local laws for commuter trip reduction. This is one of those things that they do, but keep up on it. SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley Act. This was put into effect because of the Enron debacle. Requires specific actions for employers to take when changing stock options or announcing blackout periods. Typically what will happen is with stock options, they'll have blackout periods. You can't sell the stock during time X. I think a lot of those are pretty much going away just because it's not palatable anymore. But that's kind of what killed the Enron people, is that as the stock was tumbling, it was in a blackout period. The executives were cashing out and going to town, and the employees weren't allowed to, and they lost everything. There were some people who invested in nothing but their own company, which that should be a lesson to everybody. If you are investing in only the company that you work in, that's I hate to say stupid, but it's stupid. You want to talk to a financial advisor to make sure that you're diversifying and getting taken care of in that sense. But I'm not a financial planner, and I did not stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night, so I'm not going to go with that. The Affordable Care Act of 2010, like I said, this is the law to kind of watch because current administration has decided that he wants to change it. He tried to change it last year, failed, and I'm sure it's only a matter of time before he tries again. We'll see how this midterm election goes as to whether he's going to have an opportunity to change it again, but it could be interesting. Okay. They talk about the difference between demographics and psychographics. I won't get into that too much in this video because I want to get to, okay, so age differences. This is where they kind of talk about some of the different groups, but they really talk a lot about millennials. Like I said, if you really want to deep dive on this, get in touch with me. I have the SHRM presentation. I can send it to you. That talks a lot about this. I've actually had a few students ask for it already, so feel free to dive in, and that comes from SHRM, so it's a pretty authoritative source. We're hitting 45 minutes, and so I want to go ahead and wrap up here. If you have any questions, send me an email. You know where my email address is located. Haven't gotten too many emails this past week. Maybe you guys were just too busy, but feel free to reach out to me. I'm very happy to talk to you and looking forward to it. If you have any questions, give me an email, or call me, because my phone number is also on there. Have a good week, and like I said, if you need anything, reach out.